Hello everyone, my name is Kourtni Mitchell. I am a master's level student at the University of St. Mary, and this week we are reviewing the introduction of the book Spiritual Rhythms for the Enneagram, a handbook for harmony and transformation. So first, we're going to talk about the content summary of this introduction. So in the introduction, it kind of gives you an overview of the book as a whole, and it focuses on the interceptions of the Enneagram, a personality system, and spiritual growth. The authors present the Enneagram as a tool for self-awareness and transformation, emphasizing that understanding one's core motivations, fears, behaviors can foster deeper spiritual practices and emotional healing. So there are 4 key themes in this introduction, such as personal transformation, integration of spirituality and psychology, rhythms of spirit, and holistic growth. This introduction talks about how we can integrate our relationships with all of the different Enneagram types and learn from not only ourselves but learn about others, and how we can live in harmony with ourselves and others and approach everyone with love as Jesus and God has. And it talks about how we can relate this growth and rhythms of the Spirit to the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and how that kind of ties to the Enneagram. So overall, the introduction sets a stage for a deeper exploration of how the Enneagram can be used as a tool for personal and spiritual transformation. I really enjoyed how it talked about the mind, the gut, and the heart, and how each number within the Enneagram kind of fits in one of those categories. But when one does a lot of personal transformation and holistic growth and digging into their Enneagram number, they can access all 3 of those, and they can understand and empathize better with others. So as we move on to the third point for this, I just wanted to talk about the analysis and evaluation of the book. So the authors of this text for the Enneagram, they really gave a really clear and accessible writing style. So I found this chapter so quick to read and easy to understand, which would give a good foundation for anybody of many different walks of life. You don't necessarily have to have a bachelor's degree or getting your master's in social work, or even have a background in spirituality to be able to read and relate to the introduction of this text. The approach of the complex intersection of spirituality and psychology with a tone that is both inviting and reflective, aiming to make these ideals relatable to a broad audience. So like I said, it's concise but rich in information, and it provided good visuals. However, I'll also talk about the negatives from that as well. But from an organizational kind of perspective, the introduction is well structured. It began with providing a context for the Enneagram system and its relevance to spiritual growth, and kind of gave a discussion of its benefits and transformative potential. It kind of painted a picture of what the whole text would encapsulate, but also a good user steps on how it can be utilized and most effective for each person. One critique, however, may be that the introduction could benefit from a bit more in-depth terms of explaining the origins of the history of the Enneagram. As somebody who studied spirituality in the past and has done the Enneagram test and dug into this, I had former knowledge of the Enneagram, but as somebody coming in and reading this without any knowledge of the Enneagram, they may be confused. So I feel like the introduction could have provided more information of the Enneagram, because somebody new coming into this may have to do some research. But in the introduction, they do provide information on the Enneagram and information for individuals who need kind of some more guidance, whereas I myself have a little bit more of an understanding. So the introduction was a little bit easier for me to digest. I felt the introduction was successful in presenting the Enneagram as a dynamic tool for personal and spiritual growth. It highlighted the importance of understanding one's own core motivations and fears, and emphasized that awareness can lead to more profound self-reflection and transformation. The author's position to the Enneagram is not just a personality, but also a means of integrating spiritual practices into daily life, which is compelling and useful approach. I really like how they used their own experiences throughout this introduction and made it more personal. They weren't just talking about how good they are at integrating the different types in the Enneagram. They talked about their shortcomings and how they are good at some things but not the others, and how they've had to spend their lives fine-tuning and bettering themselves and becoming more self-aware so they can serve better and do what Jesus calls us to do: love one another, and love with our whole hearts, and truly serve others, which is what we do in this social work practice. The concept of spiritual rhythms is introduced as a personalized set of practices for each Enneagram type. This framing is particularly helpful for readers who are looking for practical tools to improve their spiritual lives. The idea that each type can benefit from specific rhythms suggests a tailored approach to spiritual growth, which is appealing and practical aspect of the book. However, the presentation of the Enneagram types and their associations, spiritual beliefs, in the introduction is somewhat generalized. The introduction briefly touches on these types, but does not delve deeply in their individual characteristics or the nuance of how spiritual rhythms will vary for each type. This could leave readers who are unfamiliar with the Enneagram system wanting more specific examples. I even felt myself wanting more specific examples, especially knowing my Enneagram score, and knowing like what my husband's is. So additionally, the introduction could expand on how the Enneagram fits into a broader spiritual traditions, which could further enrich the text for readers with varied spiritual backgrounds. So I'm really looking forward to digging into this book further to get a better understanding of some of the concepts that they introduced in this introduction. One of the strengths of the approach is that it frames the Enneagram as a tool for ongoing transformation, not just self-discovery. I really like that because in this field and as human beings, we're constantly growing and evolving. I know when I first took the Enneagram before I became a mother, and while I was in my bachelor's degree, my score was one thing and it was different than it is now. So that's a good reflection of how we change and evolve, and how personal growth and self-discovery is not, well, it's more of a transformation instead of just self-discovery. And also being able to empathize and learn more about others and use all of the parts of who we are. We may be stronger in using our mind. However, how can we use our gut and our heart and integrate it all and become stronger and more whole as a person? So the positive feedback for this introduction was very clear and accessible. I found it very easy to read. It was very enticing to read, actually, and I really liked the pictures. However, I did find the pictures kind of hard to understand, and I took a lot of time reading and trying to understand the photos, and felt that maybe the images in there could have had a little bit more explanation, and like talked about more before, they could have given more of a definition for each of the different sections so the images made more sense. I feel like I would have had to do a complete refresher to fully understand and digest some of those images. So I feel like after I do the next two sections, I might have a better understanding of some of those images within the introduction. But the introduction really gave a holistic approach. The integration of spiritual and psychological elements offers a comprehensive approach to personal growth that resonates with many spiritual seekers. And it was very practical and tailored to each Enneagram type that was innovative and practical. Negative feedback would be lack of depth on the Enneagram system. So, like I said, I could have dug a little bit deeper. And just kind of opening up about some of those different types. But I definitely think the introduction did what it was supposed to do, because I definitely was left wanting to read more and dig in and learn more about myself. So when we think about this text, the introduction, and social work, there were some key terms that were mentioned. So to integrate key spirituality terms, concepts, and theories into the concept of spiritual rhythms for the Enneagram, we looked at how various spiritual elements intersect with the practice and goals of social work, specifically in promoting well-being, self-care, and holistic care, which are firm foundations in the social work practice in the helping field. This approach aligns with the Enneagram's emphasis on self-awareness and spiritual transformation, which can greatly inform social work practice. So in this, the introduction, they talked about, about spirituality, and they also had more a Christian background. So in social work, spirituality is often viewed as a broad concept that encompasses a person's inner sense of connection to something greater than themselves, which can include religious beliefs, personal values, or a sense of purpose. Religion, on the other hand, typically refers to a structured system of beliefs or practices, like mentioned in Canada. It also mentioned a holistic view, viewing a holistic view emphasizes the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit, considering all aspects of a person's being in their care. In the context of social work, a holistic approach ensures that the physical, emotional, social, and spiritual dimension of an individual's life are addressed. That's so important. As we talk about the biopsychosocial spiritual, we're looking at that whole person. And in this introduction, they talked about that too, how we can access our whole self and how we can look at somebody in their whole self, and how we can become better and how we can love and how we can empathize. Self-care and well-being. Part of social work is taking care of ourselves. So self-care is an essential aspect of social work practice, emphasizing the need for professionals and clients alike to nurture their emotional, physical, and spiritual health in spiritual rhythms for the Enneagram. The concept of spiritual rhythms ties directly to self-care by suggesting that the Enneagram types benefit from specific spiritual practices. These practices can be used as tools for emotional regulation, reducing stress, and enhancing self-awareness, each contributing to a strong sense of well-being. They also talked about spiritual introspection. Introspection involves deep reflection on one's spiritual life, beliefs, and practices. To gain clarity and direction, it connects to the broader concepts of spiritual development, involves growth in one's spiritual understanding over time. Spiritual development refers to the process of growth in one's understanding of their spiritual beliefs, practices, and overall sense of purpose. And these, for social workers, supporting spiritual development in clients is critical, especially for those facing trauma or specific life challenges. Sorry about that. Overall, this introduction was very compelling and insightful, and was really helpful in integrating the Enneagram with spiritual growth. The introduction effectively introduced the Enneagram as a tool for both self-awareness and personal transformation, setting the stage for a deeper exploration of how each personality type can cultivate spiritual practice tailored to unique needs. There was some shortcomings in this introduction. However, the introduction established a strong conceptual framework. It could benefit from a bit more depth um, for those who are unfamiliar with the Enneagram. Um, but overall, I found it very welcoming and enticing. And I really look forward to diving in and learning more, not only about myself, but about others and how I can connect and love people as Jesus would. And I would really love to learn how to access all of me, not just my heart, not just my mind, not just my gut. How can I be the best Kourtni, and how can I serve people and really truly see people and um, be the best social worker and person that I can be? So I look forward to continuing this journey through this text and through this course. Bye, y'all.